Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So today's video, I'll be doing a bit of a discussion about last week's Daily Race C. In my opinion, I think it was probably the most controversial Daily Race C I think I've ever seen, with multiple people complaining about it. And honestly, it was for good reason. I will go through the pros and cons of this event, but in the end, I want to see what conclusion we come to. Now, for me, I feel like Polyphony were on a bit of an experimental couple of weeks, with obviously the week previous being the Le Mans with the kind of varying dynamic weather, and then obviously this last week basically being a tuning event for road cars on sports tyres and, such like that. So just a basic overview of this event. You were basically limited to the Silvia family of cars. Tuning was allowed. You was basically limited to 600 performance points with 345 brake horsepower and a 1,000 kilogram weight limit. There was no fuel, no real tyre wear. It was kind of on, but it was basically unnoticeable unless you spun the car around, in which case you'd, start seeing a slight bit of red. But in all honesty, there was no real strategy to it. It was essentially a 7-lap sprint around Suzuka. Obviously, in these cars, you were limited to the tyre choice of basically hard, medium, and soft versions of sports tyres, but because there was no tyre wear, putting on the sports gave you a big advantage. Anything else was really not needed. So let's go through the pros first, and I'm honestly going to say it was, well, different. In all honesty, it was a bit of a unique event in the fact that, this had never really been done before. Not in a Daily Race C sense anyway. Usually you're very limited in terms of your tuning, and it's kind of hidden away with a no driver rating, no safety rating version in Daily Race A. That's usually where you see these events. Obviously, these weren't the norm. These were not race cars. Usually you kind of get the either, kind of Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, or Group 4 cars running Daily Race C. You never really see many road cars there. And again, I think that the fact that you're not racing them on racing tyres, so they're not fully grip based, was a very kind of, controversial thing. People either loved it or absolutely hated it. For me, I was in the kind of camp that, it was interesting. It was something new. It was something different. The cars were, to be quite honest, absolutely terrible to drive, but really honing your skills there was a massive plus for me. I felt like I really enjoyed it, and this brings me on to point number 2, clean racing. Now, I ran a lot of Daily Race C last week, and in all honesty, the racing was probably some of the cleanest and best racing I've ever had. Even if the off chance that you got matched with someone that was maybe a lower sportsmanship rating or a lower driver rating, say in the D category or something like that, in all honesty, they just raced fair and clean. It was all hard, close racing. I think the fact that these cars were not the most stable things in the world really made people, give caution and give room and, not really kind of battle too hard over a position and, basically purposely drive into you or cause the collision. I felt like the racing was very fair, very clean, and was definitely a different standard to the norm. Pro point number 3 has to be tuning enabled. For me, tuning is a great thing within a racing game. Even when it comes to race cars, being able to tune the suspension, your gear racers and such, just to find that slight advantage and allow you to shave tenths, maybe even seconds off of your time, is always a heap of fun. I feel like we definitely need some non-BOP racers in terms of Daily Race C again, even if it's just, running the race cars instead of road cars. Being able to fine-tune a car to your personal preference instead of being very limited with BOP is definitely a plus point in my opinion. I feel like this allows, people to really dig into the tuning, fine-tune their car, maybe a specific car over the week, even if it's not the meta, to their liking, and really just go for it. The opportunities, in all honesty, with the tuning system is absolutely endless. Plus point number 4, honestly, it has to be the track. I really enjoyed Suzuka. I was never very confident with it. It was always a track that I found quite difficult to race on. The fact that overtaking opportunities are very much limited and doesn't really go in your favour if you're in the mid-pack really kind of allowed me to hone skills on a track that maybe I just wasn't the best at. and I feel like I've come out of this Daily Race C week and basically had a whole new kind of outlook on Suzuka. I feel like now I'm a much more confident driver around there. I feel like the fact that I've had to haul a very unstable car around the track for a week has just overall made me a better driver, and that's going to bring me on to plus 0.5. I feel like this was really an event for people to massively hone their skills. Like I said, a lot of these cars were very, very unstable and weren't the best cars to drive in reality, but I feel like it made you a better driver overall because of it. You know, especially in terms of, like I said, with the clean racing, you've got your awareness there, you've got the kind of awareness of how the car feels under you. I feel like overall this was definitely a plus point for this event. I saw a lot of people, you know, really kind of up in their driving level throughout the week, and it was absolutely awesome to see. So let's go on to the more negatives for this event, and this is where most of the issues come in. Number one, the meta car was not available at all during this week. The meta car for last week was the Sil 80. Whilst other cars could compete, it definitely seemed to be that the Sil 80 was the standout car. If you didn't have it though, you were really out of luck. This is a car that you couldn't win anywhere. You couldn't, you know, go and do any events to go and get your hands on it. It was basically a used dealer car, and you basically had to wait for it to rotate, and Polyphony did not once put it in the used car dealer. So a lot of people that may have not had the car were definitely, you know, out of luck in terms of getting a, you know, decent build for the meta of the week. But then you do have the point that, you know, Gran Turismo 7 is nearly a year down the line. This is a very cheap car, so realistically you should expect a lot of players that have maybe been playing for a long time to really have their hands on it by now. Con number two is definitely the tuning system. I know I've basically praised it and said it really does allow for some interesting builds, and, you know, gives you that extra layer of basically, you know, control over your car. You know, you can set it up for your personal preference and such. But there is a downside. Sometimes you can't set your car up for personal preference because the meta is an absolute god-awful car which you wouldn't dream of actually building yourself, and that was kind of the way it was for this week. The PP system in this game is very much abusable, and this week definitely highlighted that. Whilst it wasn't the most insane drops I've ever seen, and, you know, the cars that we were running basically were some of the most unstable, not really that drivable builds, you know, going, I definitely felt like it did kind of shine through the issue of the PP tuning system. It just kind of was all down to aero drops and basically who can make the biggest mess of a car, but at the end of the day keep it quick. Definitely did involve a lot of driver skill. The fact that these cars were, yes, very fast, if you didn't really have the skill to keep it on the road, then yeah, you weren't going to get anywhere fast. But I feel like it definitely does highlight a few issues with the PP system within this game. Con number three definitely has to be the fact that there was absolutely zero strategy involved. Yes, you had the tyre choices and such, but like I mentioned, softs were the way to go. You essentially had to build, you know, a car around the most power and the best compound of tyres to really get up there in the field. Now, there was no real kind of you have to pit onto a certain compound. It was basically just run that tyre. If you spin, you might get a little bit of red showing, but in all honesty, the wear and the fuel just wasn't there, which I feel like was a bit of a shame. Maybe if they extended it to an extra few laps, or maybe 10 laps overall instead of 7, with a, you know, maybe the possibility of rain again, putting that back in. They've proven they can put dynamic weather in, but also keeping the fact that we may have to, you know, run the harder compound of tyres to go longer. I feel like this would have been a lot more interesting than just being, you know, who can drive the most unstable car the fastest for 7 laps. So in all honesty, that is going to be it for, you know, the pros and the cons for this event. But what do I actually think of the event? Now, obviously, I've mentioned that I did run it a lot last week, and that's because I just find myself having fun. The fact that I was in a lobby where I didn't really have to worry about being absolutely wiped out because of the, you know, instability of these cars. People were willing to give each other a lot more room, not take absolutely ridiculous last-minute chances to just dive up the inside and completely wipe both of you out. It was just overall a very, very enjoyable time. Like I said, it was massively different from the norm, and seeing a tuning race in Daily Race C focused around road cars for once was a massively interesting week. And I feel like overall this will probably be one of the most memorable weeks for me personally within Gran Turismo 7's kind of sport mode. Due to what I said, I can see why it's really causing a stir with the cons, but overall I can only say well done to Polyphony for trying something new. You know, even if it doesn't necessarily click with everyone and it's maybe not the most popular thing to do, I definitely feel like they should do more of this in the future. Experimenting when the game's, you know, kind of in the place it's in currently is only a good thing. I feel like experimenting more with these kind of type of races, whether that be weather, tuning, road cars, race cars, anything like that, can only really take this game in a better direction. The main reason I believe this is because this game really does fall into the category of getting a little bit samey with Daily Race C. When the Group 1 or the Group 2's on, it feels rather quite fresh. We don't see them as often, but the majority of the time I feel like this kind of sport mode and Daily Race C fall into the whole, here's a Group 3 event, here's a Group 4 event, you're going to be pitting for a certain set of tyres, and once you've kind of ran it once and you get the strategy down, you're just going to rinse and repeat from there. In all honesty, there's no kind of real way to gain an advantage, there's no tuning, there's no kind of seeing where you can improve the car yourself and, you know, absolutely push it out. I feel like it definitely promotes something a little bit different. So definitely from a kind of individual point, I feel like this was one of the most unique races I think I've seen in Daily Race C, well, forever, and then definitely for the longest time. The stagnation was really taken away from me, you know, for that whole week. It was fresh, it was new, and it was just something a little bit different. And I would love to see Polyphony continue to basically experiment with different kinds of Daily Race C races, whether that be, like I said, weather, tuning, and all that kind of good stuff. It definitely just adds that extra layer to a Daily Race C, the fact that you may have to tune your car and think about how you're going to shave temps off and build the car around yourself, or maybe you'll have to worry about weather and when it might come and how it might affect your race. I definitely like seeing this extra layer added to these races to kind of shake it up and make it interesting. So that's going to be it from me for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Turn those notifications on so you don't miss an upload from me. Down in the description down below I'll have my Twitter, my Discord and my donation link. Thank you to Poggers and the Controller people for sponsoring the channel, and I will see you all later on. Take care guys. Peace.